Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and happy Monday. There is a lot of news to get to today. We've been reporting on the violent rhetoric. I mean, I do struggle with that term, violent rhetoric. It's like rhetoric calling for violence, glorifying, blessing, suggesting they're fine with violence. I mean, like, I'm not sure if there's any, is there any way that you can say violent rhetoric? I don't know. It's just, to me, even if you say like, go shoot him, whatever. It's just a point of, it bothers me. Anyway, we've been reporting on the rhetoric coming from the left, which calls for violence or blesses it or glorifies it or seems absolutely fine with it in one way, shape, or form, with a renewed sense of urgency. That's because Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10th. Let me ask you a question. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question, something. Here's my question. Without looking it up, who is David Dutch? Who is Jim Copenhaver? Who is David Dutch? Who is Jim Copenhaver? Any idea? You don't know. You don't know because I didn't know until this morning, which means more than likely you don't know. No offense, but I just mean I live in news and you have lives. You know who they are? They are the two other people who were shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, behind Donald Trump, along with Corey Compatore, who was killed. Nobody knows their name. Nobody knows those two names. And yet they were both shot along with Corey and Donald Trump, who was shot in the ear. David was shot in the chest and the liver. He also sustained broken ribs and required surgery. Jim Copenhaver, by the way, David, 57, Jim, 74, was also critically injured. He was shot in the triceps, plural, says the article I'm reading, and abdomen, according to The Guardian. We don't even know their names. So most people don't know Corey Compatore's name, who was killed, the firefighter behind Trump. That's 3. And then if you include Trump, who was shot that day in the ear, 4. That's 4 Republicans shot thanks to political violence within the past, year and a half. That was July of 24. And then came Charlie. And we know Charlie's name. We know Trump's name. Most people don't know those other 3. I'm sick of this shit. And so is everybody else on the right. And everyone else who is sane. You know, they want to hold up Charlie like he was just this one. It was just some sick kid who took Charlie down. Bull. We all watched the former president of the United States, the Republican nominee for president, get shot in the head, which is where your ear is, in the head, in July of 2024. And then we quickly moved on from the fact that 3 other Republicans, MAGA-supporting Republicans, were shot too that day. Why don't we ever talk about them? Truly, it's because the media memory holes anything bad that happens to Republicans. And God forbid they're shot in an act of political violence. Oh, hell yes, that's getting memory holed. And I'm sorry that we've been complicit. You know, we were all focused on Donald Trump and obviously Corey, who lost his life and his dear family. But we moved on from these poor other 2 really quickly. And I was just thinking about them this weekend because I was like, what happened with them? How are they? They're said to have recovered. I mean, I'm sure there's only so much recovering you do when you've been shot. It sounds like multiple times. But they too were victims of political violence. In an incident that the left, like literally Joy Reid, Michael Steele, who used to be the head of the RNC, on camera, openly, Keith Olbermann, speculating didn't happen. Remember? That like it was some sort of an op. Trump didn't really get shot. What did he do? Did he have like David Copperfield there, like creating fake victims, actual civilians behind Trump? Like how did he manage that? They just completely decided to forget and ignore the other 2 civilians who were killed. Sorry, 1 other civilian who was killed and 2 others in addition who were shot. So 4 people shot that day. And a year later, from the same vantage point, an unprotected roof, we lose Charlie. I mean, truly, like a year and a couple of months later. That's one of the things that's so awful about the Charlie shooting is it happened 14 months after the Trump shooting. Charlie and I spoke about the Trump shooting. We talked about the security concerns. We talked all about it. I just think about that now. If only he had known, if either of us had known back then that Charlie would lose his life 14 months later. And also that video of Charlie celebrating Trump's election in November of 24, which went so viral. And we talked about it on my show when he visited, about he was just, glory be to God. And you could see the tears in his eyes, the relief on his face, the near disbelief, because it's just, he told me directly, he didn't think they would let it happen. He didn't think they'd let it happen. He really thought they'd take out Trump. He had no idea that he would be the one who would be taken out. Less than a year after we had that conversation. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Let's be honest. America can still be a dangerous place, and you cannot afford to wait for help. Sure, you could use a firearm, but in today's America, defending yourself with deadly force could have legal consequences. According to FBI data, 99.9% of all altercations do not require lethal force. And that's exactly why many are turning to Byrna. Byrna is proudly American, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. These less lethal self-defense launchers are trusted by hundreds of government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security companies. Over 600,000 Byrna pistols have been sold, most to private citizens who refuse to be victims. Byrna launchers fire rock-hard kinetic rounds and also powerful tear gas and pepper projectiles. It's like two different options that you have, capable of stopping a threat from up to 60 feet away. No background checks, no waiting periods, and Byrna can ship straight to your door. Take responsibility. Protect your future. Visit Byrna.com right now, or you can go to your local Sportsman's Warehouse. That's BYRNA.com or your local Sportsman's Warehouse. Visit now and be prepared to defend. And now what we have is like a rash of growing acts of political violence, threats of political violence, and blessings of political violence by the left over and over and over. Some have asked me whether I thought Charlie's death would be like a tripwire, that set this off. Some have argued it was the murder of Brian Thompson, United Healthcare CEO, by Luigi Mangione. I mean, I think you can put it back further than that. I really think if there's a tripwire, it was what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024, when 4 people became the victims of an assassin's bullet motivated by politics, by hate. And we've never gotten fully to the bottom of that case. We still don't know anywhere near what we need to know about that shooter. But I mean, a man is dead. 3 others were shot, and we moved on. And then there's been a slow but steady escalation ever since. It's only been, my God, it's October. So we had July, August, September. So we've got, 16 months. That's 16 months. Trump, Corey, again, the other 2 victims whose names I don't yet have memorized, David Dutch, 57, James Jim Copenhaver, 74. And then Charlie, and what we saw this weekend was more, still more. ICE is under attack in several cities in this country. I just tweeted this out this morning. I'm going to get to ICE in detail, but let me just give you the headline. In January of 2024, do you remember this? Greg Abbott down in Texas was putting up barbed wire, razor wire, they call it, down on the U.S. side of the Rio Grande to prevent illegals from swimming across the river. They were dying. Illegals die all the time in that river. It's dangerous. And he didn't want that. He didn't want illegals making it to shore. He didn't want them not making it to shore. He wanted to create a deterrent so that they wouldn't even try. So he put up a bunch of razor wire along the Texas border by the water. And the feds sued Texas. They sued Greg Abbott, Joe Biden's feds. It's still January 2024. He hadn't yet passed the baton to Kamala for the race, and he was still a Democratic nominee. They went into court and they argued that immigration enforcement is uniquely the job of the feds. under the Constitution, it is uniquely the job of the federal government. And you cannot have states interfering in how the federal government goes about enforcing the immigration laws. Now, we all rolled our eyes because what was really happening there was the feds were not enforcing immigration laws. And Texas, which had a right to defend itself from an invasion, was trying to do what it could. But they went into court in front of this same Supreme Court, which has 6 conservatives and 3 liberals. And Joe Biden won that argument, convincing the court that immigration enforcement is uniquely the job of the feds, and you cannot have the states interfering or throwing up obstacles that would make it tougher for the feds to do their jobs state to state. You got these regulations in this state, you got those regulations in that state. No. The high court said this is a federal government thing. States, stay out of it, basically. And now what do we have happening in cities across America, from Portland to Chicago to LA? You have Trump sending in ICE to go try to clean up Joe Biden's mess. Speaking of the administration that would not enforce immigration law, try to clean up that mess as the 10 to 20 million illegals he allowed into this country who have been raping and killing America's citizens, to name a few. Don't get me started on the child molestation. So Trump is trying to get these people the hell out. The drunk driving is off the charts, trying to get them the hell out by sending ICE. It's literally their job into these cities to go get the bad guys. The worst first, Tom Homan has said. Not going after, at first, the illegals who are just here illegally, and that's their only crime, which, by the way, it is a crime. And by the way, they should be deported. And also, there's majority support for deporting them. But Tom Homan and Trump are realistic men. They've said we're going to start worst first. So they're going after these people who have multiple felonies on their records, in addition to being here illegally. Who the hell wants to keep child molesters in this country? We don't even want ours. Never mind Venezuela's. And they're going into these cities, a couple of cities. They're going to a lot of cities, but they're having trouble in some of these blue cities because of Antifa and left-wing activists who don't want them there, who think this is like a point of pride to try to harass ICE. And we have seen in city after city, including, it's not just these, in these blue states like California or Oregon, down in Texas, we saw ICE officers getting harassed in Dallas, and that's where somebody, this man, opened fire on them. He was killed by officials, opened fire on them trying to kill ICE officers, but he was a bad shot and he wound up killing detainees. But he was trying to kill ICE officers. So we have seen this. They were throwing cinder blocks at ICE officers in Los Angeles. And now we're seeing them try to ram the officers with their cars in places like Chicago and Portland, setting off fireworks. We actually just came up with a short list of it. Okay, I'll give you a few that we've seen. This is, first of all, DHS in August said that ICE agents have faced a 1,000% increase in assaults over the 2024 totals. 1,000%. In June in Portland, a rioter picked up and threw a smoke grenade at federal officers, striking one in the forearm and abdomen. How would you like to get hit by a smoke grenade in the abdomen just for doing your job? I don't know about you, but I sit here at this desk most of the time I have to do my job. Nobody's throwing smoke bombs at me. I don't have to worry about my intestines getting blown up or burned. That's what these guys have to do, ICE, to try to get rid of these bad guys. Also in June, a rioter was attempting to damage equipment at the ICE facility. DHS officers took the subject into custody, who resisted arrest, grabbed an officer in the genitals, and kicked officers in the groin and the legs, now charged with assault. In Dallas, I mentioned, in September, a sniper opened fire from a nearby rooftop, only hit the detainees, but the bullet casings were found with anti-ICE messages. The media reported, we don't know the motive. It literally said anti-ICE on the bullet casing. We don't know. And then you heard more about this guy's writings beforehand, and it was literally like, I hate ICE. I waited. I listen to NPR Up First podcast every day. I waited for them to update it's ambiguous. We don't know. It says anti-ICE, but who knows? They never updated it. They just moved on. That's how it works. Leave people confused. I mean, the day two reporting on it was terrible. It was explicit on how anti-ICE the guy was and how he was like, I really hope I kill ICE officers. I mean, it was explicit. No follow-up report. We'll just leave it out there floating. Ambiguous. We don't really know the motive. August, there was a bomb threat on the facility. An unknown male subject, later identified as Bratton Dean Wilkinson, a 36-year-old U.S. citizen, arrived at the entrance of the Dallas field office, claimed to have a bomb in his backpack, showed the security officer what he claimed to be a detonator on his wrist. The officer called 911. Alvarado, Texas, at the ICE facility there on July 4th, a group of left-wing extremists coordinated an ambush on the Prairieland Detention Center. Wearing matching tactical clothing, the attackers first stormed the facility and used fireworks. Then, as law enforcement responded, other attackers hiding nearby opened fire, wounding a local police officer in the neck. 15 individuals have since been arrested. My God. Did you even hear about that one? I mean, that was July 4th. That's 15 people attacked an ICE facility, coordinating an ambush with fireworks, opening fire, wounding a cop in the neck. Jeez. California, they conducted an ICE raid on a farm, and one person fired at ICE agents with a gun when they, pursuant to a warrant, raided a California marijuana farm. ICE outside of a San Francisco courthouse. They went to try to arrest. What these illegals do is they cross the border, and when our guys catch them at the border, they don't always turn them right around. They'll say, I'm claiming asylum. So they'll say, okay, here's your court date. Show up for the asylum hearing. And 9 times out of 10, they never show up. They just stay in the country illegally. That's what's been happening, and nobody ever goes to search for them. Trump didn't really in his first administration, and Biden definitely didn't. He wanted them here. But now Trump 2.0 is trying to go find them. And what better way to find them than being near the courthouse facility when they show up for the asylum hearing? Because guess what? If it gets denied, they're out of here. And frankly, we don't even need to wait for it to be denied because you don't have a right to stay just because you say the word asylum. A lot of these people didn't raise it properly. They didn't do it at a point of entry. So ICE has gotten smart. They're showing up to these courthouses where these so-called asylum hearings are happening. And in August, a mob of up to 20 anti-ICE protesters swarmed and attacked agents outside of this courthouse. One keffiyeh-clad agitator, allegedly armed with a knife, threatening to stab an officer and go after his family. Nice. That's what these guys have to deal with just to clean up Joe Biden's mess. Knoxville, Tennessee, in August. Olivia G. Wilkins, 24, attempted to run over a Border Patrol agent who was in the process of arresting criminal illegals. Broadview, Illinois. This is what's happening right now. In September, 4 rioters were arrested by Homeland Security investigations for obstruction and assault of a federal officer. Los Angeles, we talked about that in June. During a Border Patrol operation, one guy donned a mask and threw cinder blocks at federal officers and their vehicles, injuring an agent. Here, you can see him. Here he is. Look, he wasn't the only one either, by the way. We saw multiple people throwing bricks at ICE vehicles as they went by. That could literally be fatal. That could easily kill the ICE officers. Oh, did you hear the left condemn it? No, they'll only tell you that DHS is bad and ICE is bad and that they need to go. So now in Illinois, things escalating this weekend. Per DHS, they've made more than 1,000 arrests, including, this is of the bad guys, illegals, pedophiles, child abusers, kidnappers, gang members, and armed robbers. One guy, Rafael Alberto Tolentino Martinez, alleged to be a criminal illegal alien from Mexico with convictions for aggravated domestic battery of a 3-year-old. Great. Another guy, Pedro Avendano Andres, alleged to be a criminal illegal alien from Mexico with previous arrests for domestic battery, causing a circumstance that would endanger a child. Another guy, Aziz Kamal, alleged to be a deportable lawful permanent resident, though not yet a citizen, with charges for rape in the second degree, indecent liberties, assault in the second degree, and an arrest for sex offender registration violation. Goodbye. Get out. Why does J.B. Pritzker want these people to stay? Tell me that. That's what ICE is trying to do. Get people like that out of our homeland. Go home. You're Mexico's problem. Or you ought to be. Why do we have to deal with it? We have plenty of criminals of our own. We don't need to deal with Mexico's too. We have seen multiple antagonistic attacks on ICE in Chicago. We're seeing the protesters surround them. This is from September 26th, and we have the sound bites of the protesters screaming at them. Let's play that.
Arrest ICE! Arrest ICE! Arrest ICE! Arrest ICE! Shoot ICE! Shoot ICE! Shoot the fuckers! Shoot the fuckers!
They're pounding on an ICE car. He can't move. They won't let him move.
That we will win! I believe 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 that we will win!
They're literally trying to push the front grille of this SUV backward.
Oh my God! We can't be safe!
This is happening in Broadview, Illinois, which is about 12 miles outside of Chicago. You heard the chants, arrest ICE, shoot the effer. F you, they're screaming, shame, F this pig. I believe we will win. 2 were arrested, one of whom was carrying a firearm. That's what ICE is dealing with in trying to get rid of child molesters and rapists and batterers of 3-year-olds. These guys go out there, half of them have those keffiyeh scarves on, chanting, I believe we will win. Why wouldn't you believe that? We've had how many years of unenforced immigration law? You've got all of Illinois government on your side. J.B. Pritzker would like to keep those people in his state, apparently. He loves, I guess, batterers of 3-year-olds, pedophiles and child abusers. Why else would you be giving ICE a hard time? Why wouldn't you be rolling out the red carpet for them to get these people out of your state, JB? On Saturday, October 4th, Border Patrol agents were rammed. They were rammed. They had cars rammed into their vehicles that they use, ICE. See this? We're showing you. Another car rams into an ICE car. And the Border Patrol agents wound up getting into a confrontation with an armed woman whom they then shot in self-defense. She was fine. Apparently, she drove herself to the hospital for treatment of her wounds. Oh, sorry, this is a separate incident. It's not the incident, but it was something like this. None of the ICE officers were seriously injured as a result of this woman ramming her car into them. But it's a problem. I mean, they're for the grace of God. The woman, a U.S. citizen identified as Marimar Martinez, was armed with a semi-automatic weapon and drove herself to the hospital for treatment. She was discharged and taken into custody by the FBI. Good. Another person accused of ramming into ICE vehicles, Anthony Ian Santos Ruiz, he's also been taken into custody in Chicago. These guys are just trying to do their job. They're just trying to do their job. Smoke bombs in the stomach, having knives pulled on them, having guns fired at them, having cars ram them, having their families threatened, being called pigs and calls to shoot them. Ire, anger, outrage being stirred up against them by basically every Democrat in America as they try to get rid of people like the 3 I just read to you. This woman, this Martinez woman, who got shot but is fine apparently, was named in an intelligence bulletin just last week for allegedly doxing agents. She wanted them dead. That's obvious. Why would you dox them? Why would you show up with a gun? Why would you ram your car into them? Obviously, this woman wants them dead. She wrote, "Hey to all my gang, let's fuck those motherfuckers up. Don't let them take anyone." Okay. Enjoy prison, madam. Great. How's it going so far, your little enforcement attempts? I hope she rots. I really do. I can't wait to see what happens to her. It doesn't usually end well. A life of crime. Like, what is she? She's the good guy? She considers herself underdog there to save the day with her gun and her vehicle, which she's going to use to try to kill people? Was that the goal? Because she easily could be charged with attempted murder. We'll see what the charges are against her. Have not yet heard whether or not she denies these charges. Seems to me she's proud of them. And then, okay, we'll get to this in a second. Then you've got Portland that every week we talk more about what they're doing to the cops there with the people coming outside of the facility, trying to harass the ICE agents. Oh, and by the way, there was video over the weekend of Kristi Noem and some of the ICE agents trying to get into a federal facility, or was it a state facility? I think it was a state hall to use the bathroom. They're only human. And the people who ran the building said, no, get out. You can't use the bathroom. So this is what our ICE agents are up against, literally just trying to relieve themselves. And the state of Illinois is saying, tough shit. Find someplace else to go, not here. And now it's apparently policy. Apparently the state of Illinois has made a decision not to help ICE agents in any way, shape, or form, not even as human beings, in offering them a place to use a facility if they need to. That's what it's come to. All right. And on top of all that, there is nonstop lawfare. It's happening in basically all those cities, definitely in Portland and in Los Angeles. We are seeing lawfare to try to stop ICE. But before I get to the lawfare, I'm just going to put a pin in that, okay, for a second, because the reason I'm outlining all this violence against ICE is because it is part of a pattern. Okay, I started with Butler. We talked about Charlie. I mentioned Brian Thompson of United Healthcare. And now I just did the ICE attacks. The threats up 1,000% over just last year. And I listed them for you. You don't have to imagine. It's much more persuasive when people hear the actual events. You don't have to listen to Megyn Kelly summarize. It's happening. I just gave you the evidence. It is happening in city after city. And it's escalating, as we saw in Broadview, Illinois, this past weekend. And I'll round back to the lawfare. But before I leave the escalating violence, we've got to talk about what happened in Virginia and what happened with this Supreme Court justice would-be assassin. And I'm going to go over both of those in detail. Just a quick word on the Supreme Court assassin. This guy traveled across the country, bunch of weapons, had researched exactly how to kill a Supreme Court justice, apparently had plans to kill multiple, not just Brett Kavanaugh. And keep in mind, this was after the Dobbs decision, which reversed Roe v. Wade, had been leaked, obviously by a Supreme Court clerk or possibly even justice, to Politico. My money is on the left-wing Supreme Court clerk who had a long history in working on choice issues, as the left would describe it. But in any event, we never found out because Chief Justice John Roberts let the Supreme Court marshal do the investigation, and she never investigates things like this. And surprise, surprise, she didn't come up with a conclusion. He knows. There's no way Chief Justice Roberts doesn't know who the leak was and is covering. He's covering. But that's the only thing that makes sense, because now we have a new administration. There's no way Kash Patel and Dan Bongino would not like to get in there if given an invitation to actually do a real investigation. Clearly, they haven't been invited, and because of separation of powers, they'd really kind of have to be. So in any event, Dobbs was leaked, and it almost got Brett Kavanaugh killed, and the left didn't give two shits about that either. Let's not forget, shortly before that, we had Chuck Schumer on the steps of the Supreme Court saying, "You will reap the whirlwind." Okay. So this guy travels cross country. He actually gets into Kavanaugh's neighborhood. He's got the whole plan. He's been online planning it for weeks. And he sees the marshals out in front of Kavanaugh's house and only then decides, I guess I can't do it. He fully understood if he went up to any door or window of Kavanaugh's home, it was going to be suicide by cop. And so he chickened out. He was ready to kill Kavanaugh, but wasn't ready to die himself. So he wound up calling 911 and effectively turning himself in upon spotting law enforcement. Gee, do we give him a medal? That's basically what just happened. And again, I'll round back to discuss this in more detail. But this guy was just given truly, we say that term, a slap on the wrist by these judges all the time. He could have gone to jail for life. The feds wanted at least 30 years. Here he is, right around the time that he committed the crime. He got 8 years. 8. With good behavior, he's going to be out in 4. In 4. I mean, that is so close to the time in which he committed the crime. These justices are still actively in danger from this guy. He'll still be monitored, I'm sure. Okay, great. I feel better. Kavanaugh's wife and his mother attended the sentencing hearing. Obviously, Kavanaugh wasn't going to go himself. And when they heard that 8 years, they got up and walked out of that courtroom. Can you imagine the disgust they're feeling? He has kids. And by the way, again, he appears to have been attempting or plotting to murder multiple justices. Who was next? Amy Coney Barrett? She was in the Dobbs majority. How many of her 6 kids had to die so that this guy could have his way? And I'm sure you heard Morning Update today, AM Update. He's now claimed to be trans, and it's working. That sympathy play worked on this absurd, ridiculous Biden-appointed judge. There's nothing. The left-wing media, they're not upset. No one's saying this is an outrage. Do you think they'd be saying that if somebody did this in an opinion that was going to uphold Roe versus Wade that got leaked to National Review? And then some right-wing nut went out there plotting to murder Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, or, in today's court, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Do you really think the left would just be totally silent about the fact that what should have been a 30 years to life sentence wound up being 8, likely out in 4? They don't care. They don't give a shit. Because it's our people. It's the same way we don't know David Dutch and Jim Copenhaver. The same way they don't know Corey Comparatore. They don't care that they were shot. They celebrated that Charlie was killed. The polls show us more than 1/3 of young leftists believe in political violence, including assassination. They don't give a shit that ICE is being shot at, nearly killed, assaulted on a daily basis. They don't care that Kavanaugh and every Supreme Court justice now, in 4 years or less, are actively going to have to worry for their safety. And let's not forget, sometimes justices do retire. I hate to say it out loud, but Clarence Thomas is getting kind of old. Love him, don't want him to go anywhere. I'm just saying, they'll still have protection, but will it be the same level as when they were sitting justices? Will people like this nut forget what they did when they ruled in the majority in Dobbs? The left wing doesn't give a shit. Chuck Schumer, you'll reap the whirlwind. They don't care. They're creating the circumstances. Fascist, fascist, fascist. Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Then we saw fascist written on the Charlie Kirk assassination casings. And what did we see within 2 weeks? Randy Weingarten, the head of the teachers union, the second largest in the United States, come out with a book, like something about how fascists harass parents and they're bad. Literally. By the way, we checked the New York Times bestseller list. She made number 10. She's barely squeaked on. Guess what we saw after her listing? She had the asterisk. They call it a dagger. It looks like a dagger on there. That means she engaged in bulk sales. That means she probably pressured some of her favorite groups to buy her book so she could make the list. This disgusting, thin-skinned, small person. So her stupid book about fascists, which is winding up on bullet casings killing us, makes the Times bestseller list, despite the fact that it was bulk sales. The Times shouldn't allow bulk sales to make the seller list. They shouldn't. They shouldn't allow it. She basically bought her way onto the list. That's what it shows. Don't ever forget to check that. When you see the little dagger, the person effectively bought their way on the list. And let me tell you, I know how they do it. I did not do it. But I know how it's done because I know a lot of people in news. And generally they'll say, oh, I'll come and I'll do a book signing at your event. You know, if you'll just buy 3,000 books. Or some of the really rich TV personalities would buy 50,000 copies themselves. Seriously, 10,000 copies themselves. And lo and behold, that'll get you on the list. And you can say you're a New York Times bestseller. Randy Weingarten, of course, that's what happened. Nobody wants to buy her stupid book. So my point is simply, they're not shamed out of that rhetoric. They love it. They mean it. The magazine covers of Trump as Hitler repeated. They haven't backed off of calling him a fascist or a Hitler or Nazi since he was shot. The Madison Square Garden rally happened after Butler. Well after. It was before he was elected, but after that summer. And still, they already resurrected the term Nazi. It was like a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. They won't be stopped. And so before, again, I go back and do a deeper dive on some of these stories, I just wanted to give you the top line examples. And that brings me to Virginia. If you listen to our morning update, AM update, we call it today, which you really should listen to. It's very entertaining if I do say so myself. My team does a great job. I'm heavily involved in the writing process myself, so it's in my own voice. And I think it's rather snappy and very newsworthy. I've had many leftists tell me they listen to it every day. And what one of them told me was, he said, it definitely has a point of view, but I appreciate it because it helps me understand, kind of the other half that I don't normally listen to. Well, I appreciate that too. So in AM Update, we covered this case, and I'm sure you've heard about it by now, but if not, I got you. The Attorney General, Democratic candidate for AG. Okay, so let me restate that. The Democratic candidate for Attorney General, it's an elected position in Virginia, is a guy named Jay Jones. And Jay Jones, who is 36 years old, has been outed for openly and actively wishing for, praying for, and desiring the death of Republican lawmakers in Virginia. And not just that, but their children too. There appears to be nothing Jay Jones would like more than to see some of his Republican opponents, because he used to be in the State House there, die slowly and painfully in the view of their spouses, and also for their children to die slowly and painfully in the arms of their mothers so that Jay Jones can achieve happiness. This is beyond sick. And this effort, hat tip to Audrey Fahlberg of National Review Online, who got this exclusive. She did a great job. He's not getting out of the race. He's not even being asked to by virtually anyone. Literally, it was not until this morning when somebody over on Morning Joe was like, oh, he should step down, that I heard a Democrat say anything about him stepping down. Instead, what we've seen across the board is all the Democrats saying, oh, it's bad, those are bad comments, but no. But let's not get distracted. This is what his pastor, the pastor at a local church, who's also a former speaker, right? Is he former speaker or current speaker? He's current speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates down there, had to say about it on Sunday.
So we need to understand something. We have to be mature in our thinking and how we vote. We can't get distracted because they want us to get distracted by the text message here or something else. Stay focused.
It's a distraction. I mean, if we're going to be literal, it's a distraction. I can't do the lisp, but the man has a lisp. I'm sorry I'm being mean, but he's condemning the murder of Republican children, so fuck him. He's a pastor? I can't. A pastor is standing up there saying, don't get distracted by the calls of murder of Republican children. Elect Jay Jones. F you. What kind of a church is that? Seriously, what is that? And by the way, that guy too has his own list of problems. That guy was arrested. Oh God, it's in my morning update from my team today. Where is that packet? He was arrested. I'll find it. I think I've got it. Current Speaker of the House, Don Scott, Yeah. He's the first man to serve as the black speaker in the chamber's 405-year history. Yay, good for you. Guess what happened to him? He was convicted of a drug offense in 1994 and served 8 years. Okay, it had to be a bad drug offense. They don't send you to jail for 8 years for smoking the ganj. It's either dealing or you had a large amount or you crossed some serious line when it comes to the drugs. Oh, but don't worry, you don't have to think about that anymore because Joe Biden pardoned him. I mean, the auto pen pardoned him in January 2025 before Joe Biden left the office. So he got a presidential pardon for, quote, a mistake I made in 1994. Just a mistake. Okay, just a mistake. You don't seem to have reformed, sir. You seem awfully pro-crime. Why is that? So he calls it a distraction. Don't get distracted by a text message. Stay focused in church. Okay, in church. That's what happened. And then you have Neera Tanden. She was a top Joe Biden official. She went on TV over the weekend. I think it was Meet the Press. And here's what she said.
And there's not one national Democrat calling for him to step aside. Not one. It's disgraceful.
I absolutely think people should criticize that 100%. I think it was a private conversation he had, but still awful and disgusting.
It's private.
We should condemn that, but then you should condemn when the president calls the Democratic Party the party of Satan.
Yeah, in all fairness.
Why don't we just say both of those things?
I think I've paid the price for standing for political violence on our side.
It was private message. She's talking there with Mike Pence's former chief of staff. It was private. And Trump called us the party of Satan. Look, that is obvious hyperbole. The party of Satan. What does that even mean? I mean, let's be honest. That is classic Trump hyperbole. And you are in no position to cast stones at Trump for using aggravated terms against you, Neera Tanden. You guys are the ones who have been calling him a fascist and a Nazi and a dictator, etc., for years now, and who got him shot. But party of Satan is hyperbole, and it is not nice, but it's not the same as what this guy Jay Jones did in Virginia. Okay, again, I'm going to go into the details of exactly what he texted, but I'm staying surface level here because I'm on the subject of Democrat violence, the assassination attempt against Kavanaugh, etc., the threats to kill, the dreams of killing Republican children in Virginia, the ICE attacks, the actual attacks on Charlie, on Trump, on the three others at his rally. I mean, time and time again, what we see is the left excuses it. They dismiss it. It was a private conversation. Oh, does that make it better? I'm sorry, does that make it better that he, like, it's actually, you could make the argument it's even worse that it's in private, because in private, like, you actually must really mean it. Like, if you see the text exchange, it's private, but like, he's really trying to persuade the moderate Republican in the Virginia House that he's inadvertently texted, but now just throughout the whole conversation doubles down. He does not care that he's received an unwilling recipient to these messages. He just keeps trying to convince her that he's right, that this Republican adversary in the House really should die. He should be killed. It should be painful. And that also his children should be killed. And they're devil spawn too. They're little fascists, he calls them. And he's really making the case. It's not some passing, I'd be happy to see him at the bottom of a lake. That too is hyperbole. It's not nice, but that's a general kind of unfortunate, nasty comment. This guy gets specific. He knows exactly what he wants to see done to this Republican opponent. And when met with a flabbergasted colleague saying, would you stop? This is deeply offensive. I can't believe this. He stops texting. He picks up the phone and calls her. It doubles down. Then she hangs up on him. He triples down. He starts texting again. So yeah, it's private. But in private, he made really clear exactly what he wanted to see happen to this Republican colleague of his. Like, how is this an excuse? Don't get distracted by text messages. The guy wants to be the top law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Number one, the one who will have to enforce the law against people who make threats like this. How on earth is he going to do that? How will any Republican in Virginia feel comfortable with this guy being their AG? What if you are a lunatic Democrat considering taking 2 shots at the man he named? How do you like your odds of escaping the long arm of justice when Jay Jones is your AG? As all of this goes on, what do we hear from the left? We hear non-stop messaging about Republicans being fascists, being dangerous. They not only do they not acknowledge what their side is doing, they want to switch the blame and put it on the right. They tweet about how Republicans are authoritarians. Guy Benson made this point in a great ex-post over the weekend. How Republicans are the authoritarians. They have rattled up tempers around ICE to never before seen levels. They are not going to be happy until an ICE agent is killed. I mean, just like they're not going to be happy until Trump was killed. I kind of forgot about the second assassination attempt on Trump on his golf course. That happened too. That was also a leftist. Yeah. We're in new territory. And look what's happening to it, like Jews, right? With these keffiyeh wearing nutcases outside of the Israeli embassy, right? The left barely said anything about that. They didn't give a shit. Do you think they'd feel differently if an Israeli had shot 2 keffiyeh wearing Muslims, American Muslims, here or outside of an embassy in Washington, D.C.? You're damn right you would have. You would have heard a lot different messaging. It's just, it only goes one way, but all the messaging in the media goes the other. We do virtually none of this crime, and we get all of the blame for doing it. We get all of the terms that apply to it. And then, when Trump tries to stand up and say, you are not going to endanger my ICE agents who are there on my command, here's the other piece of it. He gets sued. He gets sued everywhere. He gets sued in California. He gets sued in Oregon. He gets sued in Washington, D.C. He gets sued. And then, because the people doing the suing play their cards right, they get in front of a left-wing district court judge, and that judge gives them the decision they need, saying, you cannot send the National Guard to Portland, Oregon. Too bad for your ICE agents. You cannot do it. And then Trump seeks an appeal, and eventually it goes up to the Supreme Court. And in most of the cases, the Supreme Court has said, stop that. What are you doing? You can't tell the federal government that it can't protect its own ICE agents. They can go, like they did with Los Angeles. That was the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's no conservative court. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, stop it. Of course, he can send the National Guard in there to protect the ICE agents. Slow your roll, district court judge. And now we're having the exact same fight play out in Oregon, where you had one judge on Saturday say, no, Trump, you cannot send 200 National Guardsmen from Oregon to go protect your ICE agents. So Trump tried to get clever and send them from California and Texas. Then both California and Oregon went into court and said, don't let him do this. And the judge, who was a Trump appointee, this is one of the rare Trump mistakes on the bench, obviously, said, you're trying to do an end around that earlier ruling I gave you just yesterday. You can't do that. And stopped the deployment of those National Guards. And now that's going to go up in appeal. And we'll see how that one goes. But I think that one's going to be reversed too. It has to be. There is no question that Trump has the authority to enforce federal immigration law. Just ask Joe Biden. He's the one who got us that ruling in January of 2024. There's no question Trump has the right, the obligation, and it's exclusively his to enforce the federal immigration law as he sees fit. That's what he's trying to do. And there's no question that he has the right to protect federal facilities and federal personnel. Stephen Miller was tweeting about this just this weekend in a great tweet that really summed it up. I'm going to get you that tweet. I'm going to read it for you next. First, we're going to take a break. I found it. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back, and then we're going to do a deep dive on some of these cases, most particularly that Supreme Court would-be assassin. The nutcase who just gave this guy 8 years should be impeached. This woman, this Biden appointee, should be impeached. Forget reversed. She should be impeached. What she did is a complete dereliction. Hope you're still with me. We'll be right back. Have you heard about biohacking? It's what top athletes, CEOs, and even doctors are using to take control of their health. Many people today are stuck in the cycle of fatigue, weight gain, and brain fog, but biohacking can change that, giving your body the exact tools it needs to heal, recover, and perform at its peak. That's why I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. Sure, they have your everyday prescriptions and essentials, but they also make it easy to get powerful biohacking treatments that you will not find at regular chain pharmacies. They've got NAD+ for energy and healthy aging, methylene blue for focus and brain support, a powerful antioxidant to reduce inflammation, and a whole lot more. Every order is reviewed by a licensed doctor. The prescription is included and they ship it straight to your door. Don't wait for the system to take care of you. Take control of your health today. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn, and use the code Megyn when you check out, Megyn10 ideally, to save 10% on your order. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Use the code Megyn10 to save 10% on your order today. We absolutely have to keep talking. It's more important now than ever. To cower, to hide, to go silent is not the answer. And all I can tell you is there is no fucking way I am canceling one stop on this tour. Not one stop. I'm going. I'm going to stand on these stages and I'm going to say all the things that we say all the time on this show. We're gonna make it safe for me. We're gonna make it safe for my team and my guests and you. We're going coast to coast and do something really important, which is say what's true and what's real to honor him. I really now more than ever would love to see you all face to face. God, I would love to see you face to face. I need to see you face to face. I am doing this tour and I would love for you to join me. MegynKelly.com for the tickets. We're going to get back to the news in a second, but first I want to tell you, go to MegynKelly.com right now to join me for the Megyn Kelly Live Tour, which starts in just a few weeks. We are making 10 stops across 6 states. I'll be joined by Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Erica Kirk, and so many more. And I cannot wait to see all of you. Please go. And please, if you can, sign up for the VIP meet and greet so that you can meet me in person and the guest as well. And we can have a picture taken. And I would just love to hear from you guys on what's on your mind, what you like about the show, what you would like to change, and just for us to connect in what's been a difficult time. So please go. It's MegynKelly.com, and I will see you soon. Get your tickets now before they sell out. They have sold out in a couple of venues, so you don't want that to happen to your city, not before you get your tickets. Also, I forgot to, I love to give credit to people who do great work, and I want to give credit for that video of the protesters surrounding the ICE SUV that we just showed in Illinois. That was a guy named Ford Fisher on X who captured that video. So thank you for that, Ford. We left off before the break on how the efforts in these cities are being thwarted by local officials, and then come the lawsuits to try to thwart President Trump from protecting his own ICE agents. Okay, so he sends ICE to clean up Joe Biden's mess. The locals give ICE a hard time, threaten ICE, attack ICE, assault ICE, and then Trump sends in support of National Guard or other troops, other federal supporting agents, and they try to undermine them and file lawsuits to stop that. So they want ICE twisting in the wind. They know they can't kick ICE out, but they want them twisting in the wind with no backup and vulnerable to attacks, gunshots, etc. And I'll tell you, I mentioned about what happened to Kristi Noem and the ICE agents who are looking to go to the bathroom in Broadview, Illinois, outside of Chicago, no. The answer is no. It's statewide no. You can't use the facilities. 2 more examples. In Chicago, again, crowds began gathering near a gas station. And by about 12:30 in the afternoon, a Chicago PD dispatcher relayed that armed Border Patrol agents were being surrounded by a large crowd of people. This is shortly after that woman got shot, after she was ramming the ICE trucks, and she herself had a gun. So she gets shot, she drives herself to the hospital, and news was circulating that something had happened. So shortly after that, crowds began gathering near the gas station, and news of that shooting was spreading. By about 12:30 p.m., a Chicago Police Department dispatcher relayed that armed Border Patrol agents were, quote, being surrounded by a large group of people. According to a screenshot provided to CWB Chicago, officers were told via their in-car computers, in all caps, no units will respond to this. An order attributed to Chicago PD's chief of patrol. No units will respond. They did not want the cops helping the ICE agents. They did not want the cops there helping the guys who were being surrounded by a large crowd of people. They wouldn't go. They weren't even going to protect their own people. Never mind the ICE people. They want nothing to do with it. They're washing their hands of their fellow agents on orders from their boss. They will not assist. And then, it's not just in Chicago. Listen to what happened in Portland. Okay? Portland police will provide no protection at all of the ICE agents or the federal agents who are there to protect them. There's something called the Federal Protective Service, and that is the group that will normally provide regular security for our federal facilities or officers, but they are stretched to the point of collapse, according to the DOJ right now. They cannot provide the 24/7 protection that is necessary to protect the ICE agents who are getting shot at and assaulted round the clock. And the reason they're so necessary is because there is no Portland police assistance. They will not protect ICE at all. So if an ICE officer gets surrounded by armed citizens, he's on his own. It's like maybe the Federal Protective Service, if they are there, it's a skeleton crew. It's them or bust. So that's why Trump sent in the guard, which was just, again, on Saturday, he tried to send 200. They said no. The court, his own appointee, said no. And then on Sunday, he tried to do an end around her prohibition against sending Portland National Guard troops by getting them from Texas and California. And then California joined Oregon in a follow-up lawsuit saying, you can't do that either. And this judge, who was pissed off, said, that's correct, you can't. And said no to that too. So the ICE agents still twisting in the wind there. Now, let me tell you about what's happening with this Federal Protective Service, or FPS there, because it's really egregious. First of all, DOJ says the following, that the Federal Code's Title 10, Section 12406 allows President Trump to call up the Guard to thwart the, quote, danger of a rebellion against U.S. government authority by large groups of protesters who are stopping federal officials from enforcing the law. They go on to write this. The Portland ICE facility has been an especially risky site because of repeated and recent acts of violence, the Portland Police Department's inability to provide an adequate response, and a history of mob violence here dating back to 2020, which has often been tolerated or excused by local and state officials. The facility is subject to nightly protests, which risks escalation at any moment, wrote the deputy director of the FPS, or Federal Protective Service, Region 10 that covers Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. He said that in a sworn statement, that they are subject to nightly protests, which risks escalation at any moment. In his declaration, this guy, Robert Cantu, C-A-N-T-U, describes a counter-protester and what happened in this one incident at one of the facilities. Okay, just listen, I'm going to read it to you. He writes, normally, FPS, again, that's Federal Protective Service, would be able to rely on the Portland Police Bureau, or PPB, to assist with large-scale law enforcement operations relating to federal facilities in Portland. Normally, they work in tandem. But the Federal Protective Service has been informed by the Portland Police that they will only respond to life/safety situations, but not anything immigration related. For example, on September 9th at approximately 12:21 a.m., a female protester was surrounded by a group of 12 to 13 individuals. So this one lady shows up to try to shout down the Antifa outside of the Portland ICE facility. They began to physically harass her by taking her water bottles and shining a high-powered flashlight in her eyes. At approximately 1:08 a.m., Federal Protective Service requested assistance from the Portland Police. Portland Police Dispatch responded that 2 units would respond, but an estimated time of arrival could not be provided. At approximately 1:15 a.m., so 7 minutes later, Federal Protective Services called Portland Police Dispatch back to request an ETA. At approximately 1:27 a.m., a Portland Police sergeant called in requesting a description of the situation and the counter-protester being harassed. At approximately 1:33 a.m., a Portland Police patrol car drove by the area but did not leave their vehicle or engage with the situation. At approximately 1:44 a.m., Federal Protective Service called Portland Police Dispatch again, emphasizing that the situation was not an immigration issue or related to federal property, but rather a civilian in distress, and that the counter-protester was surrounded and in danger. At approximately 1:46 a.m., Federal Protective Service contacted Portland Police once again, and Portland Police stated they did not perceive the counter-protester to be in distress or at risk of bodily harm and would not intervene. They don't give a shit. If this woman had been on the other side, they would have helped her. Guarantee. But because she was there in favor of ICE, they were like, too bad, you deal with it. The counter-protester continued to be harassed, spit on, and threatened with physical harm. The counter-protester was permitted to come onto federal property for her safety. Obviously, the Federal Protective Service finally just said, I guess we have to let her in here, which is not ideal. This could be like an undercover. This could be a double agent. That's not what they want to do unless they absolutely have to. At approximately 2:27 a.m., Federal Protective Service officers pushed the protesters off of federal property back away from the counter-protester so that she could leave the federal property safely. The counter-protester fled the area with a group of protesters attempting to follow her. Federal Protective Services believed that the counter-protester had enough of a head start to escape the area safely. At no point did Portland police respond or assist with the incident. So what does Trump do when he's getting these reports on how thinly stretched Federal Protective Services are, on how his ICE agents are under attack at facility after facility, a woman showing up with a gun and a truck, ramming their vehicles, cinder blocks being thrown at them, an open assassination attempt down in Dallas? What's he supposed to do? I mean, the left would say he should withdraw ICE. He should stand down on the deportations and the arrests. Bullshit. Joe Biden himself told the U.S. Supreme Court immigration enforcement is uniquely federal responsibility, and the feds should have full responsibility for it. He won that argument. Trump is fulfilling his oath of office right now. It cannot be ICE does its job and dies or gets assaulted every day, or ICE stands down and doesn't do its job. Those are not okay options. So Trump, understanding that the federal code, Title 10, Section 12406, allows Trump to call up the Guard to thwart the danger of a rebellion against U.S. government authority by large groups of protesters who are stopping federal officials from enforcing the law. He sends in the Guard in small supportive units to support ICE. That's already been upheld as okay. That's what the Ninth Circuit said. What happened in L.A. was they went to a federal district court who said, you actually can have the Guard here and they can assist ICE. They just can't act as like cops. They can't be like local cops. And the feds were like, they're not. And the Ninth Circuit gave them an even better green light. Like, you're good. So the Ninth Circuit upheld Trump's right to have National Guard troops there. And now we're going back to the Ninth Circuit on these Oregon rulings, the Saturday and the Sunday one, by this Trump-appointed judge who's a problem. And they're going to win. Trump is going to win. I don't know if he wins in the Ninth Circuit. I think he's going to, based on that other ruling. But even if he doesn't, the Supreme Court will reverse this and allow him to send troops in to support ICE. This is not the other big Megillah we've been discussing because Trump's been threatening it, which is sending a bunch of National Guard troops into a random state like Illinois to do law enforcement, to do crime cleanup without an invitation from the sitting governor. That's not okay. If he does that, I will be the first to come on this air and criticize him and say he's behaving extra constitutionally. Trust me, I will. This is not that. This is a much more myopic mission. It's a support mission for federal troops and federal facilities enforcing federal law. He's fine. And these activist judges won't acknowledge it. They get on the bench. They think they're king. This woman thinks she was elected president. She thinks she's in charge of how we enforce immigration law. I don't know how that one got by. I'd love to know who put her on there, who decided this was a good judge to be handling these things. Her last name is Immergut. Immergut is her name. And yeah, she was a Trump pick. Unfortunately, you can't bat 1,000 on these. You often wind up choosing, a turkey. At the hearing, she laid out what she was saying and how she felt this second bite at the apple by going to California and going to Texas for troops was not okay. She said, how could bringing federalized National Guard from California not be in direct contravention of the temporary restraining order I entered yesterday? Isn't this just circumventing my order? Politico's Kyle Cheney reports she was pretty frustrated. She's determined there's no legal basis to federalize the National Guard in Portland. And she asks, why is this appropriate? She pressed DOJ attorney Eric Hamilton about whether he believed the administration had complied with her order. She scolded him, as Hamilton noted the judge's Saturday order only applied to Oregon troops. Poor Hamilton. That's a tough argument to make. Of course, they were doing an end around the ruling. That's obvious. They saw sort of a clever out, but this was always going to be the outcome once she granted the temporary restraining order on Saturday. So now it'll go up. Now it will go up, and we'll see. Gavin Newsom reacting, Donald Trump tried to turn our soldiers into instruments of his political will. And while our fight continues, tonight the rule of law said, hell no. Okay, here's the Stephen Miller response I wanted to get to. He posts the following on X. Every word of this, every word. Here's what he writes. ICE facilities are federal property, conducting a federal mission of immigration enforcement that protects the lives and livelihoods of 300 million American citizens. The president has undisputed authority under both statute and the Constitution to deploy troops stationed in any state to defend a federal facility from domestic terrorism or violent assault. The Portland police have refused to render aid and assistance to ICE officers. The intention and purpose of the attacks on ICE is to prevent ICE from performing its duties and to force as many ICE officers as possible out of the field and into a defensive posture. Yes, he's so right. It is a violent armed resistance designed to incapacitate the essential operations of the duly elected federal government by force. A district court judge has no conceivable authority whatsoever to restrict the president and commander-in-chief from dispatching members of the U.S. military to defend lives and property. Correct. That's what this Immergut doesn't seem to understand. Today's judicial ruling is one of the most egregious and thunderous violations of constitutional order we have ever seen, and is yet the latest example of unceasing efforts to nullify the 2024 election by fiat. Remember, all of this is about preventing the removal of illegal alien trespassers from the United States at any cost. Very satisfying when someone says it exactly right. You don't always get that in news or politics. You don't always have somebody as articulate as Stephen Miller. You really don't. It's such a pleasure. That guy's brilliant. And by the way, he's been harassed violently too. I mean, I happen to know from a source close to the family, he's been through hell. They won't stop harassing him and his family. Keep going. See how that goes. It doesn't really seem like he's ready to stand down as a result of your tactics. Could be you've aggravated him even more. Maybe rethink it. Up to you. Okay. That's ICE and the legal battle, which will continue. And let me tell you something. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Ninth Circuit will side with Trump And if they don't, I think the Supreme Court will side with Trump and we will get the National Guard in there to protect our guys, our ICE guys. But he's laying the foundation there to say no judge can tell President Trump that he cannot protect federal troops in federal facilities. No one can. He's laying the foundation to say that's a violation of the separation of powers by any court that would try to do that. And it sounds like President Trump is not prepared to listen. He's listening right now, but he's warning them, you are on very thin ice constitutionally, courts. And if you continue to push us on this, you will be teeing up the constitutional crisis that you say you so fear. He's not wrong. We're not there yet, but if we get there, it will be the fault of the judiciary, which absolutely cannot stop federal troops from supporting an ICE mission. They are not there for crime cleanup. They are there to protect federal facilities, federal employees, and federal law, which this Supreme Court ruled is within their purview. Okay. What did you say to me, Steve Krakauer? You're trying to get my attention? No. Okay. Now I want to talk about Jay Jones in more detail, and then we're going to do Supreme Court Justice Assassin. I'm going to read to you. Audrey Fallberg is a great reporter. She's with NR, and this is such a scoop. It dominated the media over the weekend, and rightfully so. And as I sketched it for you, it was dominated with leftists saying private texts, not great, but like private, and also Trump, and whatever. Moving on. Here's what actually happened, okay? This is her report, which you should check out first person at nationalreview.com. On August 8th, 2022, a Republican state legislator, she's talking about Jay Jones. Sorry, forgive me. She's talking about the woman who received Jay Jones's texts. Her name is Republican House Delegate Carrie Coiner. Received a disturbing string of early morning text messages from a former colleague, Jay Jones, this year's Democratic nominee for Virginia and Attorney General. That vote is in less than a month. Early voting's already underway in Virginia. It started on September 19th. Unfortunately, large portions of the state have probably already voted for this guy, not knowing what he is. She goes on, Jones, who at the time had recently resigned from the state house after a brief stint representing Norfolk, had strong feelings about how the political class was eulogizing recently deceased former state legislator Joe Johnson Jr., a moderate Democrat with a long tenure in Virginia politics. Republican legislators like House Speaker Todd Gilbert had begun making public statements honoring Johnson's memory and political legacy. That's Todd Gilbert, the one-time Speaker of the House in Virginia, who, despite the fact that he was a Republican, thought it was appropriate to honor a fallen Democrat, a deceased Democrat named Joe Johnson, who was moderate and who had just died. He was showing his humanity. And some of those statements made by Todd Gilbert, the Republican, were making the rounds in state legislative group chats. Around 8 a.m., Jay Jones shared his feelings with his former state legislative colleague, Carrie Coiner, in a series of text messages obtained by National Review. In them, Jones derided Johnson's, the dead Democrats' political centrism and scoffed at the glowing tributes that were being made in his honor by Republicans in the wake of his death. That's who Joe Jones is. Sorry, Jay Jones. He wanted people to keep quiet. He didn't want Republicans saying nice things about Democrats. He didn't like bipartisanship. He didn't like humanity being shown by any member of the GOP. He tried to send something to someone named Mark, but instead hit Coiner, who was obviously in his phone too. And he writes, damn, that was for Mark. Yet that realization, writes Audrey, yet that realization did not stop Jones from joking about what, quote, that POS, meaning piece of shit, Gilbert, would say about me if I died. Then the conversation took a dark turn. Quote, if those guys died before me, writes Jones, referencing the Republican colleagues who were publicly honoring the deceased Democrat, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves to send them out awash in something. Jones then suggested that, presented with a hypothetical situation in which he had only 2 bullets and was faced with the choice of murdering then Speaker of the House, Republican Todd Gilbert, or to dictators, he would shoot Gilbert every time, he said in quotes, prompting pushback from his former colleague. Here's how it goes. Jones. 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the two worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Coiner responds, Jay, please stop. Jones, LOL. Okay. Coiner, it really bothers me when you talk about hurting people or wishing death on them. It isn't okay, no matter who they are. It's unbelievable. This woman, like he's texted the wrong person, and it's a Republican, no less. And then when she very clearly, her responses are the kind of responses you wish you would have when your texts get unearthed to the world. They're spot on. She's not holier than thou, but she's like, stop it. It's not okay. You're making me uncomfortable. That's it. And she doesn't wax poetic. She doesn't go on. She just says, would you stop? Like, I don't like this. He won't listen. He is determined to make her listen to what he has to say. And he does go on. Okay, Audrey writes as follows at NR. Coiner's alarm at her former colleague's violent rhetoric toward Gilbert prompted Jones, Jay Jones, the guy writing them, to call Coiner and explain his reasoning over the phone. A source close to the exchange or familiar with it told NR. According to the source, the Democratic former legislator, again, a candidate for Virginia Attorney General right now, doubled down on the call, saying the only way public policy changes is when policymakers feel pain themselves, like the pain that parents feel when they watch their children die from gun violence. He asked her to provide counterexamples to disprove his claim. At one point, the source said, he suggested he wished Gilbert's wife, that's the Republican House Speaker at the time, could watch her own child die in her arms so that Gilbert might reconsider his political views, prompting Coiner, the Republican he was talking to hang up the phone in disgust. Got that? He suggested he wished Gilbert's wife could watch her own child die in her arms so that Todd Gilbert might reconsider his political views. Now he's written that he wants Gilbert to get 2 bullets in the head. He's called her to reiterate that and to say he needs to feel pain and specifically wish death upon Gilbert's child in the mother's arms. And then afterward, this psychopath continues his barrage of messages to Coiner, saying he was just asking questions. Coiner dismissed his excuse via text and chastised him for hoping, though she incorrectly spells it hopping, that Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. Did he deny that? Did he say, oh, come on, I was just, being hyperbolic. I didn't mean it. It's just blowing steam off. No. Rather than deny that he had wished death on her children, Jones responded by saying, yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. Faced with more pushback from his frazzled former colleague, Jones somehow took the conversation a step further. I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes, he wrote, referring to Gilbert's wife and their 2 young children. This is so sick. Tomorrow, Rich Lowry and Charles C.W. Cook will be on the podcast from National Review. And I don't want to get ahead of this, but Charles has a great piece on NR right now, concluding that these texts are utterly disqualifying for Jay Jones, an attorney general. And he seizes upon that yes. I'll just give you a little preview. He writes, the most alarming of all the words in the Jay Jones text message scandal is yes. It comes after Jones's interlocutor, the moderate Republican House delegate Kerry Coiner, reminds Jones that he had just been talking about hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die and that this is outrageous. Yes, Jones replies, only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. Why does this part in particular matter, writes Charles? I'll tell you, because it was considered. It was deliberate, malicious. And he goes on to make the point that sometimes people get carried away. Here, Jones confirms his thoughts, then calmly explains their logic. Yes is not a rash indiscretion or a lazy misstatement. It is a confirmation of what? Of a worldview. That's what. This is the point I'm trying to make. This is the point of the whole episode. It is a confirmation of what? Of a worldview. That's what. A worldview. They show it to us over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It is a confirmation of a worldview, one that Donald Trump saw firsthand in July of 2024, as did Corey Compertori, as did David Dutch, as did Jim Copenhaver. One that Brian Thompson, unfortunately, never saw coming when he was shot in the back by that coward Luigi Mangione. One that Charlie never saw coming either. He predicted they'd be violent. He did. He was worried about his safety. He was more worried about Trump's. They tried to kill Trump twice. Let's not forget that guy who tried to take him down the following month at his golf course down in Florida. He just got convicted in court after representing himself. One that these ICE agents are having to deal with every day. A worldview of a worldview, a confirmation. That's what. Charlie, he's so good. I am going to steal a little bit more from this article today. We'll talk more with him about it tomorrow. But he writes, I've talked before on my podcast about the two types of bigots. On the one hand, you have the unthinking types who say awful things about particular sorts of people, but who, having never really thought those things through, will back away or soften when challenged. While I dislike them, these people do not worry me a great deal. On the other hand, you have people whose bigotry is the product of an earnestly held, well thought through ideological framework. These people terrify me. One is a casual idiot. The other is a committed zealot. And it is zealots, not idiots, who tend to change the world for the worse. That's what we're dealing with here. Zealots. Zealots everywhere. Supported by a dishonest media who eggs them on, who doesn't care about truth. They just care about votes, currying favor from their own side and hatred for the other. We're immersed in it, and we've created a new ecosystem when it comes to media, which is good and healthy and the antidote, but it hasn't completely eradicated the existence of the other. I mean, I told you before, like, you looked at the RFKJ controversies. At my house, when I get the New York Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, all three are ripping on him. All three totally unsparing in their coverage of RFKJ. The media is a problem, and the left is a problem, but I repeat myself. But the Neera-Tandons of the world, not to mention this, current Democrat House Speaker in Virginia, don't let the text messages distract you. Where is the Democratic Party saying, you must step down, sir? Jay Jones, you've gone too far. You don't speak for us. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they calling out this Kavanaugh judge who's just about to turn his killer out in 4 to 8? Where's the left saying, we cannot have that? What if one of ours gets killed? Apparently that's what you need to get their attention. Not advocating that. I'm just saying for them to care. I guess that's what it would take, because they don't care about the conservative justices. Very clearly, what program on CNN or MSNBC is leading today with, oh my God, a man tried to commit a political assassination and only got 8 years. He's going to be out likely in half that. This is outrageous. No, what we're seeing instead is every single media outlet either entirely ignoring the fact that this actually is a man, or going along with the fact that he now calls himself a trans woman and only using she, her pronouns as they excuse away this sentence. That's where we pick it up next on the outrageous sentence of the would-be Kavanaugh assassin. Don't go away. Do you owe back taxes or have unfiled taxes? Did you forget to file for an extension? The October 15th deadline is fast approaching. If you have not gathered all of your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be targeted by the IRS. They can garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, or even seize your property. Tax Network USA can help you. Tax Network USA is a nationwide tax firm that has helped taxpayers save more than $1 billion in tax debt. They have filed hundreds of thousands of tax returns and assisted thousands, so they might be able to help you too. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000 for a 100% free consultation. In one short call, the experts at Tax Network USA will guide you through some simple questions to determine how much you could save. Take action now before it's too late. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000. Did you know gold is up around 40% this year? That's not speculation, it's reality. And if a portion of your savings is not diversified into gold, you are missing the boat. Here are the facts. Inflation is still too high. The US dollar is still too weak. And the government debt is still growing. This is why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones driving prices up to record highs. But it's not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group and get in the door now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into one in gold. You don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. The best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has historically been a safe haven. Text MK to 989898 right now to claim your free info kit on gold. MK to 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. I just wanted to mention two other things. New York University's law school, this is per the Free Beacon, tried to stop the Federalist Society there, that's the more conservative group that is formed at these law schools, from hosting conservative scholar Ilya Shapiro tomorrow, 10/7, the 2-year mark since the horrific terrorist attack on Israel. They wanted to host Ilya Shapiro. You may recall Ilya ridiculously got forced out of Georgetown Law because he sent out a tweet when Ketanji Brown Jackson was chosen by Biden, which had the phrase lesser black woman, because he was saying there were other much better candidates. And obviously she was an affirmative action pick, which we know because Joe Biden said she was an affirmative action pick, specifically said he was going to pick a black woman before we ever knew her name. And so Ilya sent that tweet out and he got forced out of Georgetown. And in any event, he's brilliant. And he was going to speak at NYU's law school, but not even just the whole law school, the Federalist Society, which is a smaller group. And they came out and said, we can't accommodate you because of, quote, increased likelihood of demonstrations and protests connected to the anniversary of the 10/7 incidents in Gaza. The initial request to change the date came from the law school's director of institutional programming and governance, Penelope Fernandez. The law school said you have to change the date. Change the date for, quote, security reasons. They were told that his schedule made that impossible. And then the law school claimed it had run out of space to host him at all, effectively canceling the event. Then, on October 1st, the Free Beacon published a story about what was happening. And the university's outside counsel approached Shapiro and asked what was needed to make this right. Unbelievable. So this is like a double whammy for these leftist universities. So we get to hurt the Jews and conservatives in one fell swoop. Winner! Winner! We get to boot Ilya. We get to not commemorate 10/7 with anybody who would speak sense. And we also get to hurt the Federalist Society by not giving them their wish. Cha-ching! Let's do that. Then the law got involved and realized, oh shit, we're already in the midst of a President Trump crackdown for anti-Semitism on various universities. Maybe this isn't smart. And by 8 p.m. that evening, the dean of the law school, Troy McKenzie, told the Federalist Society that NYU did, in fact, have space to host the event after all. What a shock. They did? Oh, I'm shocked. Now the event is back on for 10/7. Not for nothing, but over at Bowdoin College in Maine, they also canceled an event recently. And guess what that was? A Charlie Kirk vigil. A vigil to help the students who were on campus who love Charlie from to get together and mourn him. Here's the statement that the kids put out about the purpose of the vigil. We recognize that Charlie's views and ideology sparked strong disagreement, and that members of our community hold a wide range of perspectives on his work. This gathering is not about politics or debate. Rather, it's an opportunity to come together peacefully and respectfully to remember the aspects of his life that resonated deeply with many, particularly his devotion to his faith and his commitment to family values. 15 minutes before the vigil was scheduled to begin, the Associate Vice President of Safety and Security, Bill Harwood, sent an email to all students and employees saying the vigil was off, at least for now, as a result of external threats, and asking all community members to avoid the museum steps. Who do you think called in those threats? I think it was conservatives. I think it was people of faith. Or do you think it was the tolerant left we've been talking about all show? This is what happens. By the way, good for the Federalist Society for reaching out to the Free Beacon and recognizing that they have rights and that American Jews have rights to have commemorations of this terrible event, even on a college campus. The Hamas supporters never stopped having commemorative events on college campuses. You have to fight back. So they did with lawyers, and that worked out. I don't know whether they ever rescheduled the vigil. Bowdoin College should have said, we will bring enough security officers and police officers on this campus, and we will move this event wherever we have to make sure you are safe in mourning Charlie Kirk. We will not let threats stop our event. Stop mourning. Grow a pair. They were too chicken shit, and they had to, quote, postpone the vigil. And we'll get back to you on whether and when that postponement date is offered. Okay, Kavanaugh. So this guy is a man who, it seems to me, after trying to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, decided he would do much better if he claimed he was a woman, and recognized there was a very high likelihood, since he was in federal custody and had confessed, and it was all over his media and his emails and so on, his planning, that he'd probably do better if he just owned it. And if he owned it as a woman, that he had a much better chance. Keep in mind, this all happened during 2022 under Joe Biden. He had a much better chance of going to a woman's prison where he would prefer to spend the rest of his life versus a male's. Well, in the interim, Donald Trump won, and Donald Trump put a stop to that. But like so many of these other items, we saw a federal district court judge enjoin his order stopping men from going to women's prisons. So right now, even though Trump has ordered it to stop, it's going on. Men are going into women's prisons, and men who are already in women's prisons are not being transferred out because of this judge's order, which is going to make its way up to the Supreme Court on the merits. So this guy decided to suddenly declare himself trans. And what this judge says, Deborah Boardman, a Biden appointee, is that in 2020, which had been 2 years before the assassination attempt, he secretly decided, here she is. Look at this person. She was a federal public defender for some 11 years. She was one of the first judges to enjoin Trump's order purporting to stop birthright citizenship. She went to Jordan for a year after she finished college, as a Fulbright scholar. And she's your garden variety leftist who, just like that Trump-appointed judge in Portland, thinks she's the president. And she decided that he had secretly declared himself to be a trans woman in 2020, but so conveniently, no one else knew about that until after he tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice. So convenient. That's when he came out with it. Wonder what his inspo was to go full trans. This woman, Deborah Boardman, doesn't give a shit. She loved having the excuse to let him out, again, in as little as 4 years with good behavior, potentially. Here is what the DOJ told the judge before sentencing. That this man, Nicholas Roski is the man. Now they want us to call him Sophie. And normally I will go along with name changes because that's a legal thing that actually can be done. Anyone can change their name. I'm not going to here. I'm not calling this man Sophie. His name is Nicholas, and he tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice. That's who's there. And I don't believe he's a trans person at all. I don't believe anyone is trans, but he certainly isn't at least even having gender confusion. By the way, he appears to be a furry. Okay. So we have the Charlie Kirk shooter who was dating a trans furry and into furry porn. And we have this would-be shooter who is into furry porn and now says he's trans. Anyone sensing a pattern? Anyone concerned at all? Got the trans shooter of the children in Nashville, got the trans shooter of the children in Minneapolis, but there's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. The trans community is under attack by us. We're the villains for even raising it. Back to Nicholas. The DOJ said after Politico published that draft Dobbs decision in May of 2022, Roski began plotting revenge against Kavanaugh and other conservatives on the high court. I just got it. Hold on. This just came in as I'm speaking. They never rescheduled the Charlie Kirk vigil at Bowdoin at all. And then, oh my God. And then an article was published in the Bowdoin Orient, I think that's the school paper, entitled The Charlie Kirk Vigil and Meek White Supremacy. And you can guess where it goes from there. We'll get back to it. Oh my God. Here's the first point he makes. Wow. The first point this guy makes is Kirk's faith wasn't about God or community. It was about Christian ethno-nationalism. So that's what you get at Bowdoin. You cannot honor Charlie and his life, which is all that those kids wanted to do. You will not reschedule the vigil. You will read a hit piece on him about how he wasn't really even a man of faith. You're disgusting. Okay, back to the Kavanaugh would-be assassin. He researched, planned, procured the tools for the planned killings. This is all per the DOJ. Traveled across the entirety of the country with those tools, including a gun, and attempted to delete online evidence of motive and intent. The defendant's objective, to target and kill judges, to seek to alter a court's ruling, is an abhorrent form of terrorism and strikes at the core of the United States Constitution and our prescribed system of government. Right on. Roski searched for firearms-related terms 90 times in the month after the Politico leak. His searches included information on police response times to gunshots and silencers. This is all per an article in National Review, Brittany Bernstein, the author. Roski also conducted research on how to shoot like a sniper from long range and how to break into residences and watched videos on mass shootings and serial killers. He researched techniques for strangulation and killing someone quietly and looked at more than 30 websites with information on head and neck anatomy, including graphics that showed knives in the body. He also made comments on Discord about what could happen if conservatives lost to justice on the court. Some of his messages made clear his intention to remove multiple justices. 8 years. That's what he got. Why did he get 8 years? Because he presented a sob story to this activist judge. Morning Wire, our pals over at the Daily Wire, their morning show, which is also excellent, report as follows. The judge who went with the she, her, Ms. pronouns for this guy, Nicholas. Ms. Roski, quoting the judge, came out to herself as transgender in 2020, but kept it a secret. Ms. Roski's sister came out as gay 2 years prior, but Ms. Roski saw that their parents struggled to reconcile her sexuality with their religious beliefs. I, writes the judge, am heartened to see that this terrible infraction, that's what she calls the attempted assassination, This terrible infraction has helped the Roski family accept their daughter for who she is. Keep going. The judge speaks of the fact that Trump has now issued an executive order trying to keep men in men's prisons. With that injunction in place, Ms. Roski could receive, they say it's been enjoined. And with that injunction, Ms. Roski could receive gender-affirming care. But if the injunction goes away, she could be denied it. So when I sentence her, I take into account that she is a transgender woman. Way to get every single man coming in front of you, Judge, to declare that he's a woman. Way to flood the female prisons with men pretending to be women who have zero gender dysphoria or confusion. Go fuck yourself. You just endangered whole scores of female prisoners who are serving their sentences the way they should be after committing terrible crimes that landed them in the joint, who now are going to have to share cells with men who are sex offenders, men who are serial rapists. Those are the ones most likely to feign gender confusion. Gee, I wonder why, to get into the women's prisons. You, madam, are part of the problem. Not to mention what you've just done to Brett Kavanaugh, his wife, his mother, and his family, that now have to worry he has 4 years until he can no longer live in peace. All because you believe in gender ideology and you believe this nonsense that was spoon-fed to you by Roski, who the Daily Wire's Luke Rosiak reports appeared as a tall man with a deep voice who made no attempt to even hide the fact that he is a man. He's not even trying to look female. He knows he doesn't have to. He just has to say the magic words. The court, the defense, and the defendant's family members all referred to him as a she during the court proceedings. The media, all calling him she, her, and Sophie. Some not even reporting that this was a man. It is a man, but at least for this media, they could offer it was a man when he committed the crime. That would be helpful. NBC's headline: woman sentenced to 8 years for attempting to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. No one's going to know what the hell they're talking about. Anybody who knows the story knows that it was a man who tried to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. It would have been extraordinary to find out it was a woman. It's very rare for women to attempt these assassinations. And so they don't know what they're talking about. The lead line: a woman who pleaded guilty to attempting to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh 3 years ago was sentenced Friday to more than 8 years in prison. Amazing. Back in April, before, I guess, they accepted that he was a woman, their headline was, at NBC still, man who had gun and knife will plead guilty to trying to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. You don't know what the hell you're seeing and reading if you rely on these people for your news. Who killed Brett Kavanaugh? Sophie Roski, they'd tell you. A woman. I thought it was a man. Wait a minute, I thought it was a man named Nicholas. Nope, you're wrong. This is fiction. The media goes along with it. It's utter fiction. We should be sticking to fact. The fact is, a man tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh, and a man got sentenced to a slap on the wrist by this activist judge. Again, back to the Daily Wire report. As his mother wept, Roski also choked up, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down. His mother told the judge she began attending PFLAG meetings, parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays, and learned about the LGBTQ plus community, and is now committed to going on this journey with Sophie. These parents, they did a bang-up job. They got the one kid who I guess is female, who says she's a lesbian, who felt so ostracized she didn't want to talk to them. And now they got another one who says suddenly he's trans and tried to assassinate a Supreme Court justice. But now they're going to go on a journey with him, and they're going to call her Sophie because Sophie, quote, was frustrated with what is going on in the world. And this is the mother speaking. We were not a safe place to process it. Great job. Great job. You should have been a safe place for Nicholas to become Sophie, and then maybe he wouldn't have been so fucked up. No, that's not actually how it works, no matter what PFLAG told you. Great job. There's more. Staying the same here, the Luke Rosiak article. This guy's Reddit reveals the following. A post saying he was a trans gamer girl seeking friend. A post saying he was seeking daddy to have complete sexual control over me. A post that reads, I am into androgynous or feminine people who use she, her pronouns. Is he gay? Is he a lesbian? What is he? Play partners, pretty kinky, have a FET account and everything. I had to look that up. It's a reference to something called FET Life, which is a social media outlet that is centered on kink, BDSM, and fetish communities. What a shock. He goes on to say, he put out a classified ad calling himself a male to female pet for owner. Forgive me for reading this out loud, but he writes, I want to wear nothing but a collar, ears, and tail plug and communicate only through my body what I want. He goes on to post on Reddit, I am pro-abortion, in favor of aborting fetuses, not pro-choice. Said all babies should be aborted because they cannot give consent to being born. Explains his upset over Dobbs. And then he gets to the lead up to the Kavanaugh assassination. On May 20th, 2022, he asks Reddit users, quoting, the Roe v. Wade leak has brought a lot of attention to the Supreme Court and what it is capable of. If going into the future, the Supreme Court retains the same members, what is a realistic expectation for the future? On the other hand, if a conservative judge were replaced by a liberal one, thus changing which party has the majority, what would change? The next day, he posted in Reddit's forensics forum, claiming to be a novelist, writing a killer who is obsessed with not leaving evidence. What methods could they use? And now what you have is the judge saying, this is an atypical defendant and an atypical case. Though she got far too close to executing her plans, the fact remains she abandoned them. Sophie Roski's admission of guilt, an effort to come clean, did not occur after or even because she was caught in the act by police. If she had not called 911, law enforcement never would have known about Sophie Roski and her plot to kill a Supreme Court justice. Really? Do we know that, Judge Boardman? Do we? We don't know that the federal agents wouldn't have seen him, and stopped him and interfered with him at a time when the Supreme Court was under enormous threat because of the release of that opinion. Boardman found that while the presence of the marshals may have moved the needle, she rejected the government's argument that it was the sole factor in his, I had to change the pronouns from the people who changed it, in Roski's decision to call 911, which the judge called remarkable, extraordinary, and largely driven by the call from Roski's sister. The assistant U.S. attorney insisted that the presence of the two deputy marshals at Kavanaugh's house was the real reason disaster was averted. Quote, if the coast was clear, the defendant would have proceeded to break in and shoot the associate justice. It really was the law enforcement presence that altered the outcome of the associate justice's life in this case. Then Boardman goes on to say she's going to take the transgender status into account. And she said, I take into consideration the conditions of pretrial confinement and the fact that she is a transgender woman and will be sent to a male-only facility. She questioned, the judge did, Boardman, whether Roski would receive adequate mental health treatment in federal prison. Again, referring to Trump's executive order banning gender-affirming care for federal inmates. Let's not hide the fact, she writes, that there's an executive order on this specific topic. A lawyer for Roski, the defendant, said The lawyer is confident that the Bureau of Prisons will give Roski the medicine she requires. But beyond that, Your Honor, little is sure. Little is sure. And this worked on this Judge Boardman. That's why she made it only 8 years. Then Roski's family weighs in on how he was an honor student, he was an Eagle Scout. She struggled with her mental health, especially during the isolating years of the pandemic. Oh, for fuck's sake. Had trouble opening up to a conservative Christian set of parents about her transitioning. It's the Christians' fault. It's the fault of the conservative Christians for not buying into the trans thing. What I see now, said the mother, is that we should have listened more. She was frustrated with what was going on in the world, and we really were in a safe place for her to process that. Now, Pam Bondi says that she will appeal the ruling, but it's very, very hard to have a sentence issued by a federal district court judge overturned. It's very hard. It's an abuse of discretion standard that the appellate court will employ, and that means you have to show the district court judge abused her discretion. And I think, unfortunately, what's likely to happen here is the Court of Appeals is going to say, oh, she really weighed the fact more that this guy outed himself. You know, remember, he didn't actually go. He saw the marshals and then he called 911 saying, like, I'm having a crisis. I'm about to kill Brett Kavanaugh. And that should be at least one factor that weighs in his favor. I don't deny that. But 8 years? Hell no. He should get 30 instead of life because of that. But I think the Court of Appeals will say it's within her discretion. She's the one who took the evidence. She's the one who looked at the defendant. Unfortunately, I think this will likely stand, and I really, really hope I'm wrong. I desperately hope I'm wrong because I think this endangers every sitting member of the high court, not just the conservatives. It endangers the liberals too. God forbid there's some crazy out there who wants to kill one of them. We can't have it. There has to be a strong, unusually strong deterrent placed on these kind of political assassinations, whether it's of a Supreme Court justice, a conservative pundit and activist like Charlie, or a former president like Donald Trump, Republican nominee for president. It's deeply, deeply wrong. Okay, that's going to do it for today. It's just Monday. It's just Monday. But there was a lot to go over. So I feel we've set the scene as we go into this week. What more could be delivered? I shudder to even ask. I'm looking forward to speaking to the guys from National Review on this tomorrow because they're always good on the big picture perspective and like historically where this fits in. Charles will be here to expand on his article about the nutcase down in Virginia, and we'll see whether the worm turns on him. Will more Democrats come out and show any sort of morality, any sort of intolerance for explicit text after text after text after phone conversation maintaining Republican children should be murdered? That's as good a point as any for ending today's show. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.